Blue and red lights slice through the darkness of Willow Creek, their rhythmic pulses illuminating manicured lawns and startled faces. Neighbors emerge from their homes in robes and slippers, drawn by the commotion breaking the tranquility of their peaceful suburban town. A cordon of yellow tape stretches across the entrance to Oak Ridge Park, where just hours earlier, a storm had raged both in the skies and between three lives fatally entangled. Approximately 10% of all students report experiencing some form of sexual misconduct by a school employee by the time they graduate high school. In 7% of these cases, the relationship progresses to physical intimacy. The story I'm about to tell you isn't merely about a boundary crossed. It's about the devastating chain reaction that follows when desire overwhelms duty, when loneliness clouds judgment, and when betrayal ignites rage. Have you ever wondered what drives someone to risk everything for forbidden love? What compels a respected professional to jeopardize their career, reputation, and freedom? What emotional void becomes so consuming that ethical lines blur until they vanish completely? Perhaps you've witnessed a relationship that seemed inappropriate. Maybe you've questioned the closeness between a mentor and their protege. Or possibly, you've felt that dangerous pull towards someone you absolutely should not want. Tonight, we enter the lives of three people whose choices collided with catastrophic consequences. Lila Hartman, a brilliant literature teacher trapped in a loveless marriage, Ethan Rivers, a gifted student searching for understanding, and Dr. Marcus Hartman, a husband whose discovery of betrayal unleashed a violence that shocked a community. This isn't just another story of forbidden romance, it's an examination of human frailty, power imbalance, and the explosive aftermath when private transgressions become public knowledge. If you're fascinated by the psychology behind forbidden relationships and the forces that drive people to make devastating choices, hit that subscribe button and notification bell right now. This channel delves into the human elements behind true crime, the motivations, rationalizations, and consequences that forever alter lives. From above, Willow Creek resembles a town plucked from a vintage postcard. Tree-lined streets branch out from a central square where a copper-roofed clock tower presides over locally owned shops. White fences border meticulously maintained homes with wraparound porches, where American flags flutter on patriotic holidays. The town consistently ranks among America's top 100 places to live, boasting property values that climb steadily each year. Morning rituals here follow a comforting rhythm: joggers circling the community park, baristas memorizing regular orders at Creek Coffee, parents carpooling children to school. The town newsletter highlights academic achievements and sports victories with equal enthusiasm. Crime rates remain so low that the police blotter often features nothing more dramatic than occasional speeding tickets or noise complaints about teenage parties. At the heart of this community stands Willow Creek High, a brick building crowned with an impressive bell tower visible from most neighborhoods. College pennants line its hallways, testament to graduates who secured spots at prestigious universities. Trophy cases overflow with awards for debate championships, science olympiads, and athletic tournaments. Parents relocate to Willow Creek specifically for this school, where 92% of graduates pursue higher education. Principal Robert Carter, with his salt and pepper hair and signature bow ties, personally greets students each morning. Teachers at Willow Creek High don't simply instruct, they mentor, with many forming bonds that last well beyond graduation. The school board meetings overflow with parent volunteers eager to contribute to fundraisers or chaperone events. Yet beneath this gleaming veneer, fault lines run deep. Behind closed doors, families struggle with pressures invisible to neighbors. The town's obsession with success creates unspoken hierarchies. Students navigate crushing expectations while parents compete through their children's achievements. Teachers balance impossible standards while maintaining professional boundaries. The sunset bathes Main Street in golden light each evening, making the town appear warm and welcoming, perfect for establishing shots. The high school's imposing facade, classroom windows glowing after hours for dedicated study sessions, empty sports fields at dusk, and the contrast between sprawling luxury homes and modest apartments on the town's edges all tell a story of disparity beneath uniformity. For in Willow Creek, perfection isn't just desired, it's demanded. and maintaining appearances becomes an exhausting performance that eventually demands its price. Every morning, Lila Hartman entered her classroom 20 minutes before first bell. Students would find her arranging fresh flowers on her desk, daffodils in spring, sunflowers in summer, beside stacks of annotated poetry. At 34, she commanded attention not through volume but through passion. Her literature discussions transformed classic texts into urgent, living conversations. "Find yourself in these pages," she'd urge, her voice dropping to a whisper that made students lean forward. "These characters breathed just as you breathe now." Behind her captivating classroom persona, Lila's life had hollowed. Her marriage to Marcus had become a performance of partnership, shared mortgage, separate bedrooms. At faculty gatherings, she'd mention "my husband the surgeon," with practiced admiration while colleagues nodded, impressed. Few noticed how she lingered after school hours, grading papers that could easily wait until morning, postponing her return to an immaculate, empty house. Dr. Marcus Hartman's hands saved lives daily at Willow Creek Memorial Hospital. His surgical precision earned him professional reverence and a six-figure salary that funded their Tudor-style home and summer cottage at Lake Windermere. Colleagues described him as brilliant but distant, a man who remembered every anatomical detail but forgot anniversaries. His 80-hour workweeks and midnight emergency calls initially seemed like dedication. Eventually, they became convenient escape routes from a cooling marriage. Marcus's office displayed his medical degrees but not a single personal photograph. When hospital staff inquired about his weekend plans, his answers remained vague. Catching up on journals or household maintenance. The emotional walls he built served him well in surgery, where detachment preserved focus, but gradually isolated him from genuine connection. 17-year-old Ethan Rivers possessed the rare combination of intellectual curiosity and emotional intelligence. His essays explored philosophical questions beyond assigned topics, earning him reputation as Willow Creek High's most promising writer. With disheveled dark hair and second-hand clothes, he stood apart from peers whose families occupied the town's luxury developments. Raised by a single mother working double shifts as a hospice nurse, Ethan learned self-sufficiency early. Their apartment above the hardware store provided shelter but little guidance. He found solace in books, developing a vocabulary and perspective that made him seem older than his years. When teachers praised his insights, his quiet smile revealed what he truly hungered for: recognition. Principal Robert Carter maintained his school's sterling reputation through vigilant attention to protocol. His administrative assistant, Mrs. Norwood, noticed Lila's after-hours sessions, but filed them under dedicated teaching. English Department Chair Thomas Jensen observed the growing closeness between teacher and student during faculty meetings, where Ethan's name frequently peppered Lila's contributions. Community fixtures like Florence Henderson at the public library noticed Ethan and Lila's animated conversations among the stacks. Barista Jamie at Creek Coffee observed their Saturday morning discussions that stretched for hours over cooling mugs. But what would drive these seemingly normal people to such extremes? Stay with me to find out how ordinary loneliness can transform into extraordinary danger when boundaries collapse and judgment fails. The relationship between Lila Hartman and Ethan Rivers began innocently enough during Willow Creek High's annual writing competition. Ethan's submission, a complex analysis of power structures in Greek tragedy, caught Lila's attention with insights rare for a teenager. After awarding him first place, she approached him with an opportunity. "Your perspective deserves development. Would you consider additional guidance after school?" Their Tuesday afternoon sessions started formally. Lila maintained professional distance at her classroom desk, while Ethan occupied a student chair, discussing literary techniques and writing strategies. His analytical mind challenged her to defend interpretations she'd long accepted as given. For the first time in years, teaching felt intellectually stimulating rather than routine. "You've read Dostoevsky already?" she asked one afternoon, noticing his reference to crime and punishment. "My mother works nights. Books keep me company," he replied, revealing a glimpse of isolation that resonated with her own. The shift began subtly. Lila moved their sessions to the more comfortable reading area with armchairs. Their conversations extended beyond literature to personal philosophies. She started bringing 2 coffees instead of just her own. He began arriving with discussion questions unrelated to assignments. 3 months into their mentor relationship, the first boundary fell during a conversation about Wuthering Heights. Kathy and Heathcliff's connection transcends social norms, Ethan observed. They recognize something essential in each other that no one else sees. And destroy themselves because of it? Lila replied, her voice unexpectedly emotional. Are you okay, Ms. Hartman? The simple question, asked with genuine concern rather than obligatory politeness, cracked her professional veneer. For 20 minutes, she spoke about feeling invisible in her marriage. He listened with a maturity that made her forget he was 17. Afterward, she apologized profusely. That was completely inappropriate. I'm your teacher. You're also human, he answered. Their dynamic fundamentally altered. Lila began confiding emotional truths, while Ethan offered perspectives that made her feel understood. Their sessions moved to the local library, then to Creek Coffee, public spaces that somehow felt more private than school grounds. Text messages about reading recommendations gradually included personal check-ins. Their conversations included lingering eye contact that conveyed unspoken understanding. The definitive line was crossed during spring break. They met accidentally at the bookstore where Ethan worked part-time. After his shift, they walked through Memorial Park discussing Milan Kundera's views on human connection. When rain began falling, they took shelter in the park gazebo. There, amid the rhythmic drumming of raindrops on the wooden roof, their conversation fell silent. The boundary between teacher and student dissolved in a moment of mutual vulnerability, replaced by something far more dangerous. From a psychological perspective, their relationship exemplifies classic power imbalance exploitation. Despite Lila's emotional vulnerability, her position gave her institutional authority and life experience that Ethan lacked. Her emotional needs, validation, intellectual connection, feeling desirable, overrode professional ethics. For Ethan, the attention from an admired adult offered validation his home life lacked, creating an illusion of equal exchange that masked fundamental power inequality. Their relationship existed in emotional equivalence but ethical contradiction. Both received what they desperately needed: recognition, understanding, connection, through means that violated core social boundaries. Each interaction normalized their boundary crossing, making subsequent steps easier to rationalize. If you're finding this story as compelling as it is disturbing, take a second to hit that like button. These psychological dynamics reveal how even intelligent, well-intentioned people can gradually rationalize behavior they would condemn in others. The first warning sign appeared during parent-teacher night. English Department Chair Thomas Jensen noticed Lila referencing Ethan's insights repeatedly during her presentation. Ethan's analysis of Macbeth's fatal flaw, Ethan's perspective on the role of women in Shakespeare. As parents nodded appreciatively, Thomas observed something unsettling in her animated expressions, an enthusiasm beyond professional pride. School librarian Dorothy Winters cataloged Lila and Ethan's evolving reading habits. Their literary selections mirrored each other with suspicious synchronicity. Obscure Romanian poetry one week, Japanese existentialist novels the next. They discussed these books for hours, Dorothy mentioned to a colleague. It's wonderful to see such dedicated teaching, her colleague replied, missing the concern in Dorothy's voice. At faculty lunches, Lila's phone buzzed constantly. She'd glance down, smile faintly, then excuse herself to respond. The basketball coach once glimpsed Ethan's name on her screen before she hurriedly turned it over. When asked about their special project, Lila's explanations grew increasingly elaborate yet vague. Principal Carter received an anonymous note. Watch Ms. Hartman's relationship with Ethan Rivers. He filed it away, attributing it to student pranks or faculty jealousy. The exceptional improvement in Ethan's academic performance seemed to validate their extra sessions. Meanwhile, Creek Coffee became the inadvertent theater for community observation. Barista Jamie noted their Saturday morning ritual. Lila arriving first, ordering 2 drinks, selecting the corner table with comfortable armchairs. Ethan arriving 15 minutes later, as if by coincidence. Their conversations featured animated gestures, leaning forward when speaking, mirroring body language. "My teacher never looked at me that way," Jamie commented to a coworker. Gossip crystallized when Florence Henderson from the library mentioned to her book club that she'd seen them at the lakeside path one Sunday, far from the academic environment of school. "Very intense conversation," she noted. "Stopped abruptly when they saw me." At home, Marcus Hartman began collecting mental evidence. Lila's phone password changed suddenly. She began taking evening walks, something she'd never prioritized before. Her explanations for arriving home late grew elaborate. Faculty meetings running over, student emergencies, car trouble. When Marcus suggested they attend the school fundraiser together, Lila manufactured excuses with transparent panic. One evening, Marcus discovered Lila's laptop open to her email. A message from erivers@gmail.com sat in her inbox with the subject line, "What you said yesterday changed everything." Before he could click, Lila entered the room and closed the laptop with forced casualness. Dinner conversations became investigations. "How was your literature class today?" he'd ask, watching her expression carefully. "Any promising students this semester?" His questions carried double meanings she pretended not to notice. The temperature of their home dropped with each passing day. How often do we ignore warning signs in our own lives until it's too late? The red flags waving frantically before disaster often become obvious only in retrospect, when consequences can no longer be avoided. April 17th arrived with low-hanging clouds that threatened rain by afternoon. Marcus Hartman's surgical case concluded early, a rare occurrence that allowed him to return home before sunset. The empty house echoed with his footsteps as he moved from room to room, his surgeon's methodical mind cataloging details. Lila's hurried breakfast dishes in the sink, her laptop left charging on the kitchen counter. He hadn't planned to invade her privacy. But when a notification illuminated her screen, "I can't wait to see you tonight," the message preview ignited something primal in his chest. His finger trembled as it hovered over the mousepad. One click revealed hundreds of exchanges with Ethan Rivers. The messages told a devastating story. "You understand me like no one else ever has. I count the minutes until our conversations. These feelings terrify and exhilarate me. Meet me at our spot in the park tonight at 8. We need to talk about our future." Thunder rumbled outside as Marcus read their entire history, each message driving the knife deeper. The teenager's eloquent declarations intertwined with his wife's responses, intellectual discussions that evolved into emotional intimacy and finally into something unmistakably inappropriate. His medical training had taught him to remain calm during crisis, but this betrayal bypassed all rational thought. By 7:30 p.m., rain lashed against windows as Marcus watched Lila's car back out of their driveway. Her headlights cut through sheets of water as she drove toward town. Marcus waited 5 minutes before following, windshield wipers struggling against the downpour. The storm matched his internal chaos, visibility reduced to just yards ahead, thunder periodically drowning out rational thought. He maintained distance as her sedan wound through residential streets toward Oak Ridge Park. When Lila parked near the eastern entrance, Marcus continued past, circling back to position his vehicle behind a maintenance building. Through curtains of rain, he watched her hurry toward the covered pavilion, carrying not an umbrella but a thick manila envelope. Lightning illuminated the park in stark white flashes as Marcus approached on foot. The wet grass muffled his footsteps while water soaked through his leather shoes. From behind an ancient oak tree, he observed Ethan's arrival, the boy looking impossibly young as he jogged through the downpour. Their conversation began with visible tension. Lila handed over the envelope. Even from a distance, Marcus could read their body language. Lila's arms wrapped protectively around herself, Ethan's pleading gestures, their faces etched with conflict. "I can't continue this," Lila's voice carried during a momentary lull in the storm. "We need to end it now. Because you're afraid of consequences, not because it's wrong," Ethan replied, his voice carrying the confident conviction of youth. "I'm your teacher. I betrayed." "You're the only person who sees me," Ethan interrupted. "Not as a student, but as a complete human being. Marcus stepped from behind the tree, soaked to the skin, rage burning through the chill. Is this your definition of a complete human being? Destroying a marriage? Manipulating a child? Their faces transformed with horror as lightning illuminated his presence. Lila stepped forward, hands raised defensively. Marcus, please, this isn't what you think. I read everything, Marcus growled, advancing toward them. Every message, every lie. What followed unfolded with terrible swiftness. Ethan moved protectively toward Lila. Marcus lunged forward, shoving the boy backward. Ethan's foot caught on the pavilion step, sending him crashing against a stone bench. The sickening crack of his head against stone edge coincided with a thunderclap. Blood mixed with rainwater, spreading in pink tendrils across the concrete floor. Lila screamed, dropping to her knees beside the motionless form. Marcus stood frozen, doctor's instincts warring with husband's rage. When Lila reached for her phone, Marcus grabbed her wrist. "What have you done to us?" he demanded, voice breaking. The struggle that followed was brief but violent, her desperate attempt to reach help colliding with his frantic need to process what had happened. Her head struck the pavilion column as they grappled, her body crumpling beside Ethan's. What happens next will change this community forever. Dawn broke over Willow Creek with the quiet shattered by a jogger's horrified scream. Richard Lowry, a retired Army colonel who ran the park's perimeter each morning at 5:30 a.m., discovered 2 bodies beneath the pavilion. One dead, one barely breathing. His 911 call brought a fleet of emergency vehicles within minutes, their lights painting the sleepy town in harsh blues and reds. Paramedics transported Lila Hartman to Willow Creek Memorial, the very hospital where her husband had performed life-saving surgeries hours earlier. Her injuries included a severe concussion, multiple fractures, and internal bleeding requiring immediate intervention. She remained unconscious as doctors fought to stabilize her condition. Ethan Rivers was pronounced dead at the scene, his promising future extinguished by a single, devastating impact. The medical examiner would later determine that hemorrhaging from blunt force trauma had ended his life within minutes of the injury. The manila envelope found at the scene contained college recommendation letters Lila had written for him, perhaps her attempt at reestablishing appropriate boundaries. By noon, police located and arrested Marcus Hartman at his office, where he sat motionless in his desk chair, still wearing rain-soaked clothes from the previous night. His surrender came without resistance, his surgical hands, instruments of healing, now marked with evidence of violence. When officers read him his rights, he responded with just 3 words, "Is she alive?" News vans descended on Willow Creek like vultures, parking outside the high school, hospital, and police station. National headlines blared sensationalized versions of events: deadly classroom affair, doctor's deadly rage, teacher-student relationship ends in blood. Journalists ambushed students for quotes, offering payment for photos of Lila and Ethan together. The community fractured along fault lines of judgment. Outside the courthouse, protesters held competing signs: "Protect our children from predators" versus "Justice for Ethan." Social media exploded with debates about teacher ethics, marriage sanctity, and temporary insanity. Former students defended Lila's character, while parents demanded system-wide investigations into teacher conduct. Ethan's mother collapsed during his funeral, her grief compounded by unwanted publicity and financial strain. A GoFundMe campaign for burial expenses reached $50,000 within hours, the community's guilt manifesting as generosity. Meanwhile, the Hartman home became a macabre tourist attraction, with strangers driving slowly past to photograph the place where a monster had lived. The district attorney charged Marcus Hartman with second-degree murder and aggravated assault. His defense team immediately began constructing a crime of passion narrative, gathering evidence of the relationship between teacher and student. Lila faced her own legal jeopardy upon regaining consciousness. Charges of professional misconduct and inappropriate relationship with a minor awaited her recovery. Principal Carter submitted his resignation amid accusations of negligence. The school board implemented emergency protocols requiring doors remain open during all one-on-one student interactions. Teachers underwent mandatory retraining on professional boundaries, many resenting the implication that they might follow Lila's path. As this case moves toward trial, fundamental questions remain about responsibility and justice. Who bears the most responsibility in this tragedy? The teacher who crossed professional boundaries? The husband whose control shattered into violence? The educational system that missed warning signs? Comment below with your thoughts on where the greatest fault lies in this cascade of terrible choices. The State versus Marcus Hartman trial began 9 months after that fatal night, inside a courthouse surrounded by news crews and onlookers. The prosecution presented a methodical timeline, reconstructing Marcus's actions as calculated revenge. Text messages, internet search history, and GPS data painted the picture of a husband tracking his wife with deadly intent. Dr. Hartman didn't happen upon this meeting by accident, prosecutor Elena Jimenez emphasized. He followed his wife through a thunderstorm, waited in the darkness, and attacked when confronted with his worst fears. Defense attorney James Whitfield centered his case on temporary emotional breakdown. The law recognizes that human psychology has limits, he told the jury. When my client discovered hundreds of intimate messages between his wife and her student, he experienced acute psychological distress that no reasonable person could withstand. Medical experts testified about heat of passion responses, how intense emotional trauma can override rational thought processes. The defense presented brain scans showing how betrayal activates neural pathways associated with physical pain, arguing that Marcus essentially suffered a psychological injury that temporarily impaired judgment. After 3 weeks of testimony and 4 days of deliberation, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty of voluntary manslaughter rather than second-degree murder. The judge sentenced Marcus to 12 years in prison with possibility of parole after 8, a decision that satisfied neither side. Outside the courthouse, Ethan's mother addressed reporters with quiet dignity. My son's potential disappeared that night. 12 years seems insufficient payment for a lifetime lost. Meanwhile, Lila Hartman faced her own reckoning. Though physically recovered, she entered a different courtroom to face charges of professional misconduct and inappropriate relationship with a minor. Her teaching license was permanently revoked. She accepted a plea agreement that included 3 years probation, mandatory therapy, and registration as a sex offender, a designation that would follow her for decades. The Education Board's official statement condemned her actions while implementing statewide policy reforms. Mandatory reporting of one-on-one meetings, transparent digital communications, and enhanced training on professional boundaries. For Lila, the punishment extended beyond legal penalties. Employment opportunities vanished. Former colleagues erased her from school photographs. Her academic publications were quietly removed from curriculum materials. She became professionally radioactive, her expertise and credentials permanently tainted by her transgressions. The Hartman Rivers case transformed educational environments nationwide. School districts across the country implemented Ethan's Protocol, comprehensive policies requiring documented supervision for all one-on-one student interactions. Digital communication between teachers and students must now flow through monitored platforms rather than personal channels. Annual boundary training became mandatory, with case studies drawn directly from Willow Creek's tragedy. Psychologists point to this case as a textbook example of how power dynamics corrupt judgment. When someone holds authority over another person, particularly during formative years, the relationship contains inherent imbalance, explains Dr. Rebecca Lawson, educational psychologist. The student may feel mature enough to consent, but lacks the life experience to recognize manipulation. Meanwhile, the adult rationalizes crossing boundaries by focusing on emotional connection rather than professional responsibility. The warning signs, so glaring in retrospect, reflect universal red flags in inappropriate relationships. Excessive private time together, special treatment, emotional confidences, physical proximity, and defensiveness when questioned. Most crucially, both Lila and Ethan exhibited personality changes noticed but not addressed by those around them. Her sudden interest in teenage cultural references, his newfound confidence speaking with adults. Willow Creek itself bears permanent scars. The park pavilion was demolished and replaced with a meditation garden dedicated to victims of violence. The high school instituted transparent classroom designs with interior windows and open-door policies. Community members describe a persistent wariness. Parents more protective, teachers more distant, students more guarded in forming connections with mentors. Yet amid this caution lies valuable wisdom. The tragedy demonstrates how isolation creates vulnerability. Both Lila's emotional starvation in her marriage and Ethan's lack of adult guidance left them susceptible to inappropriate attachment. It reveals how seemingly minor boundary crossings lead incrementally toward catastrophic violations. Most importantly, it reminds us that accountability systems protect everyone, even those who chafe against their restrictions. The true lesson of Willow Creek isn't simply follow the rules, but rather understand why those boundaries exist. They safeguard the very people who might be tempted to violate them. Proper professional distance isn't cold. It's the foundation of genuine care that prioritizes others' well-being above personal gratification. 3 lives shattered in a single night, all because boundaries designed to protect were treated as obstacles to overcome. This tragedy reminds us that rules governing professional relationships aren't arbitrary limitations but essential safeguards. Each small transgression paved the way for larger ones, creating a path that ended in irreversible destruction. The true victims extend beyond those directly involved. A mother lost her son. Students lost their teacher. Patients lost their surgeon. A community lost its sense of safety. All because momentary emotional fulfillment was prioritized over lasting ethical commitment. Boundaries exist not to prevent connection, but to ensure that connections form appropriately, with equal power, honest intentions, and proper context. In their absence, even good people can make catastrophic choices. If the story affected you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more true crime stories that teach valuable life lessons about choices, consequences, and the fragile nature of trust.